Okay, how's everyone doing here? Okay. Okay, Hey guys. Okay,
Hard. Hello?
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's having a good day. Can you guys hear me? Do I sound good? Is everything okay with my voice?
Hello, sir.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing?
You want to start something? Watch yourself there. Hello, mister.
Yeah, but there is good news though. I still have the Jack Marston Stranger missions to do, and I'll do those in the 60 FPS mode, so that'll be fun to do. Okay. The 2x collector. Oh, that's pretty good. Is it 2x XP also on the collector? Because if it's 2x XP, I might use that just to level up really quick. Eventually want to get up to level 1000 in this game. Binging all your random videos. I come from DVAU's community. Question, do you think any game will top Saints Row 2 for you in the future? Maybe GTA 6. That's the only game I could think of that could top Saints Row 2. For people that don't know, I consider Saints Row 2 my favorite game of all time. So that's my favorite video game of all time, and so far there's not been one game that has beaten that for me. Thank you, Eddie, for the super chat too, and Max. Thank you, London. The Squeaky Cleaner Company is going to be in their default outfits for the other half of the game. You'll see some incognito mercs, but that's it. Okay, London. And thank you, Justin. Hi, Pro. My job at Walmart didn't really work out well. I found a new job as at a casino as a barista for the coffee shop that's inside. Oh, that actually sounds like a much better job than the than at the at Walmart. Do you get tips at that place too? So that that honestly sounds like a much better place to work at than at Walmart. I'm happy for you, Justin. Thank you for sponsoring my channel. Hey, GB, how are you, man? Can you explain more about that tweet that you made earlier? Sure. Basically, I'm not trying to get into politics or anything, but I hear like the U.S. government several times says, oh, the economy's improving, the economy's getting better, and stuff like that, and it's like, the thing about this is, the way the government talks about this, like they say the economy's getting better, it's getting better, it's like, if the economy is getting better, you don't need to say that. You don't need to point that out. People can see that if the economy is getting better. You as the government don't need to say that. But the fact that the government constantly keeps bringing it up, it's just extremely narcissistic on the government's part. And there's a big difference between having a good economy for the elites, when we're talking about like the large giant corporations, and the common man and woman. Because if the large corporations, is the economy improving for them? Probably. Is the economy improving for like, the average working class person? Probably not. It's like, gas prices fall just like a few cents, and the government acts like they did a miracle or something like that. It's like, oh, the gas fell by 5 cents, and the government's like, oh, we did it, we did a good job. And it's like, that's not an accomplishment. If you want to beat an accomplishment, bring it down by $1, not just by 5 cents. So that's all I'll say about that. Is Jeff Bezos a good guy? No, I would say he's not. Thank you, Pirate, for the super chat. The reason that I would say he's not a good guy is because I don't know how he acts in his personal time, but I see how he runs his company. And while Jeff Bezos might make donations to charities, the thing about that is the first place where charity starts is right where you're working with your workers. Why are the workers at his company treated like garbage? Like they're sweated for just so many hours? The company is just makes it so difficult and so annoying to take breaks. They stress out their drivers like crazy. The Amazon workers are always like, you know, upset. It's just how much they're pushed. So, like, why are the Amazon workers are treated like garbage? You're telling me that Jeff Bezos can't control that? I think that Jeff Bezos, I think, you know, he could, you know, take a stand and he could say, you know, we're not going to do crap like this. We're not going to overwork our workers like this. We're going to hire more people. We're going to properly staff our place. We're going to make this more simple and easier for people. You know, why can't they do that? But, you know, they're trying to really milk every single penny that they possibly could at Amazon. It's disgusting. It's like, you don't got enough money already. Let me see here. Thank you, Pirate. And thank you, Rashawn. Hello, Pro. How's life, man? Hope you're good. Thank you, Rashawn. Thank you for the super chat. I hope everything's going good for you, too. Not necessarily in regards to inflation. Gas prices in certain parts of LA reach $7.59 per gallon. My God, ugh. Yeah. That's, ugh, I'm sorry. That's horrible. Did I just take out 2 guys in 1 shot? Did I just do that? I think I got a headshot on 2 guys. Did I just do that? Can somebody rewind the clip like 10 seconds before? Did I just get 2 of them, a headshot on both of them in 1 shot? I think I did. Okay, let's see here. I did, okay. Cool. I'm kind of surprised I haven't watched you earlier. The DVAU GTA guesser video is one of the funniest. Oh, Dark Viper AU. I was confused what you meant by DVAU. Okay, Dark Viper AU. Yeah, I know who Dark Viper AU is. He's a friend of mine. You know, we talked to each other a few times when we made a video together. I know you say you aren't funny, but you are hilarious. The thing about me is I don't try to be funny. That's the thing. Is sometimes I might say something that people interpret as being funny, but I don't, you know, I don't try to be funny. That's just not my personality. You know, I'm not the guy to watch necessarily to get your laughs. I'm the guy to watch if you like, you know, if you like guides and you like lore videos and explaining things. Like, my profession is explaining things. Like, I'm really good at lore and explaining stuff, and that's what I do. You know, I will laugh. It's not like, you know, I don't laugh at all, but I only laugh at things that I particularly find funny. Like, if I don't find something funny, I'm not gonna laugh or try to make, like, you know, stupid jokes or something like that. You know, that's just my personality, and that's just who I am. Hey, Pro, you gonna do a Halloween stream? If so, what are you gonna dress as? Yes, I am gonna do a Halloween stream, for the Halloween stream, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play Outlast Whistleblower. I think what I'm gonna do. Thank you, Justin, for the super chat. I like the history lesson, so thank you. And thank you, Max and Justin. High Professional been relapsed after a bad week. Wait, what happened, man? What's your favorite band? I don't think I really have one. I don't listen to much music. You should do Outlast Whistleblower and Insane. That's probably not going to be fun. I'll do it on the second hardest difficulty, but Insane is just too much. Will you play Assassin's Creed Mirage? Maybe if I get to it, but I still got a lot of games to play. Can we play? Sure, Aslan. Anyone can play with me. Yeah.
This is what you get.
Did you grow up Catholic, by the way, since you are Polish? I know you're agnostic right now, but I almost married a Polish woman from the UK, and I'm Eastern Orthodox. My family, religion in my family is all over the place. I would say that probably like 60% of my family, I would say, is probably Catholic. I would say that like 20% of my family is Muslim, and then the other 20% of my family is atheist. So I'm the only agnostic in my family. Everyone's either religious or they are or they're an atheist.
That's the good rate for an ugly as hell corpse.
Damn it!
Also, the head contractor Kaufman is a captain and not the full leader. More of a head contractor. The mercs might become more reckless. Muslim? Are they Turkish or Bosnian? No, they're Tatars. So I'm Polish. My family comes from Poland, but when I tell people that you know that a lot of people in my family are Muslim, people are generally surprised by that. I'm not Muslim myself, but the reason for that is because a lot of my family are Polish Tatars. They're a people that actually came from Central Asia, you know, hundreds of years ago, and they settled in Poland. The Tatars are a Turkish people. I believe, yeah, they're a Turkish people. They're from the east. Oh, let me see. Look at the comments here. Thank you, London, for that super chat. Let's do another one here.
Hell away from me!
The stupid ads are getting out of hand. Wait, are you getting an ad in between my stream? Does the ad pop up in the middle of the stream? Because I only have it on where the ad is only supposed to pop up right when you click on the stream. So like right when you click on the stream, that's the only time an ad is supposed to pop up. It's not supposed to pop up during the stream. Are you getting ads in the middle of the stream? Like, is it in the middle of the stream? Or is it only when you clicked on the stream? If you are looking for a game with a, if you're looking for a game with a dark history like GTA 4, you should play Cyberpunk. I know you don't like futuristic games, but give one a try. I'll look into that, Bastion. Thank you for the, super chat. How much would you sell Turkish doner wrap? Wait, what's a doner wrap? I don't know what that is. You are the review bruh of video games, well thank you. That guy's my cousin. No, I'm joking, he's not my cousin. But this, yeah, it's like, there's so many people that they come to my videos, and, like, they see me in a suit a lot of times, and they're like, and there's so many comments that people have left, and they're like, oh, hey, you're like that review bra guy, are you related to him, and stuff like that, and so, I looked the guy up. I didn't even know who Review Bra was. I didn't know who this guy was. I looked this guy up, and it's like a guy in a suit that's like reviewing food, and people say that I'm very similar to him. Lamb wraps? I don't know what that is. So wait, are you guys getting, like, ads in the middle of my stream? I just want to know, like, are you watching the stream and, like, a random ad is popping up, like, in the middle of the stream? Because it's not supposed to do that. I have that off, where it's only supposed to pop up at the start, only at the start, that's it. Thank you, Blinded Eagle, for the super chat. Not me? Yes? No, just the beginning. Okay. Did you know the Mongols were Tatars at the beginning? Not really. The Mongols, here's the thing is, the Mongols conquered the Tatar people. And when the Mongols conquered the Tatar people, they enlisted them into their militaries. So a huge chunk of the Mongolian military were Tatars. But they weren't, the original, Mongolians who conquered them were not Tatars, they were Mongolians. So it's, here, Wait, what are you asking me, Missouri? What about view counts? Wait, what? Can you ask your question again? I didn't see it, Missouri. But look, I'm a man of the people, and so, I used to have ads in the middle of my streams, so, like, they would pop up in the middle of my streams, and what happened was it was annoying a lot of you guys, and I looked at your comments, and you guys were just getting annoyed that ads were popping up in the middle of the stream, and so I basically said, that I'm turning them off. Just so it doesn't annoy people on the streams. The only time I have ads on the stream is the one at the start. That's it. So like when you click on the one at the start, when you first time you click on the stream, you'll see it. I don't spam my stream with ads. Once the stream is uploaded though and it becomes a video, then I put some more ads onto it. But when it's live, the only ad you'll see is at the start. You won't see in the middle of it. But it's, but some people are telling me in the comments that they're seeing ads in the middle of the stream now, but I didn't do that. I have that feature off, so I don't know why it's doing that. What do you think of a computer science degree nowadays? Honestly, I'm not trying to attack anybody with a computer science degree. I think that working in computers is good, but I think it's a bit overrated too. Because the thing about this is, that's probably the most common degree that I hear. Like, when I ask people, like, what degree they have, or they tell me what degree they have, most of the time it's computer science degree. It's, like, the most common degree that I hear nowadays. And don't get me wrong, computers is evolving, and, and it's getting a bigger world to work in. But I knew one guy who had a computer science degree, and he could not get a job anywhere. Like, nowhere. So I'm not saying it's a terrible degree. It's not going to get you a job. But I think, personally, to a degree, I do think it's overrated. So I'm not trying to attack anybody that has a degree in computer science. In my personal opinion, I don't even think college is worth it. I think that, I think you should do what you want to do, and I don't think that, I think that maybe going to trade school or something like that, I think that's more effective than college itself. Would you sell shawarma wraps? I don't know what that is. For one day we'll be sponsored by Sheep Tacos. Thank you. When you start your YouTube channel, Patrick, did you become obsessed with viewer count like other YouTubers do? At the start of my YouTube channel, like, when I started it, no, not really. However, though, when my YouTube channel got to, like, 2018, like, 2019, like, around that time, I was obsessed with the viewers. I will admit that. Like, the views on the videos, I was. And basically, I was thinking that if the video doesn't get a certain amount of views in, like, 24 hours, I was thinking that it was a failure, and that the video didn't do well, and it did take a toll on my mental health. Eventually, I got away from that. I don't think like that anymore, but yes, I did used to think like that. Like, most YouTubers, they do think like that. They'll tell you, no, I don't care about the views, but a lot of YouTubers, most YouTubers, they do. Me, personally, I used to be like that. I'm not really like that anymore. Obviously, I would prefer every video to get a lot of views. I'm not going to deny that, but I'm not going to go crazy if, like, a video doesn't do well. So it's like, I'm not going to, like, get all offended or something like that. So that's it. But, like, there's a lot of YouTubers, they go really crazy with those views, and they're really obsessed with that. And they basically think that if a video doesn't get a specific amount of views in, like, 24, 48 hours, they think that it's a failure. And I personally think that that's a terrible way of looking at it, and I think that you should do what you like to do. Because, like, when I started doing, like, the playthroughs on my channel, like, people were coming to the playthroughs, and they were saying, oh, these playthroughs suck, you're not getting as much views as your GTA content is better, and I would ask people, what's wrong with my playthroughs? And most of the time, people would respond to me saying it's not GTA, and I'm like, well, that's not really a critique. If you come to my playthroughs and you say that your playthroughs suck, and I ask you, why does my playthrough suck, and they say it's not GTA, That's a stupid critique. That's not a critique. That's dumb. Like if you're gonna criticize like a video, like if you're gonna criticize like a playthrough of mine, then like say, oh, maybe you keep dying in the game, or you're playing on the easy difficulty or something like that. But if somebody just comes to my playthrough and just says, oh, this video sucks because it's not GTA, I'm not really gonna take that person seriously. Honestly, that's a stupid like stupid critique. I make plenty of GTA videos already, but the thing about the playthroughs is, the people that were critiquing my playthroughs and they were saying, oh, the playthroughs don't get enough views, what they don't understand is that playthroughs grow over time. They grow over time. Like, for example, if you look at my Saints Row videos, and I'm not talking about the reboot, I'm talking about, like, Saints Row 1 and 2. Like, when I posted those videos, like, the first month that I posted those videos, they got, like, 10,000 views within, like, a month, most of the Saints Row videos. But now if you go back to the Saints Row 1 and 2 videos, like, a year and a half later, some of them have over 100,000 views. One of them has like 200,000 views. So they grow over time. That's what people don't understand about these. So I'm a patient guy. I'm not like that person that like thinks like, oh, if it doesn't get like a certain amount of views in this time, that's gonna it's gonna suck. But I used to get obsessed with the views. I used to did think like that, and it did drive me crazy. And it was not a good feeling personally.
That's your due.
Let's see here. Hi Pro, would you ever play FNAF series while wearing a security outfit? This would probably be a good idea for this Halloween, the series on the PlayStation Store. Wait, Five Nights at Freddy's, that's what that is, right? Five Nights at Freddy's? Oh, that's that horror game where you're a security guard, right? And there's those robots in, like, the restaurant that try to kill you. That's what that game is, right? Maybe I'll do a playthrough that one day. Isn't that, like, a movie coming out on that? Thank you, Sleep Punch Man, for the super chat. Anyone not able to send membership milestone chats? Oh, I don't know. Are you guys able to send membership messages, like the milestone membership chats? Blinded is saying he can't. Like, it's whoever's like a member. Are you able to send a membership like message right now, like the membership comment, highlighted one? I can. I had to recently quit my retail job. My coworkers were racist. Boss was too overwhelming and weird customers. I hope that you reported your coworkers, because that's unacceptable. If your boss didn't do anything about that, your boss is an idiot, and it's good that you left that job. Then I hope that you do find a better job. I'm sorry that you went through that, XD9. Thank you for the super chat. Let's see here. Yeah, I know that, AN, but he was saying that he can't post the highlighted comment just now. Hello, from Indonesia again. I'm still curious, what was that about the Mongol invasion talk several minutes ago? Thank you, Gabriel, B, for the, super chat. Basically, we were talking about the, Tatar people, which the Tatar people are, have you heard of Keemstar and Sofots? Isn't that like a YouTuber, I think? He has like million subscribers. I almost know nothing about him, though. Thank you, Pirate, for the super chat. But about the Mongolians, we were talking about the Tatars, and how the Tatars had been conquered by the Mongolians, and the Mongolians had, like, used them in their militaries. But the, what was it? Yeah, that was pretty much what we were talking about there. What scenes are more dark in the Max Payne trilogy? The starting chapter of Max Payne 1 and the other moments, or the great American savior of the poor? Unless I see something really messed up in Max Payne 2, I would say that Max Payne 3's The Great American Savior of the Poor is probably the most disturbing mission in the entire Max Payne series. Ah, great. That sucked. Lancaster amp. You're turning people into glue. Yep, remember that line too. I should have used the Lich Field at closer range. That's what I should have done. I think you missed one of my super chats. I'm sorry if I did. Thank you, Lendon, Gabriel, XD9. Let me see. Oh, thank you, Blinded Eagle, and thank you, am I ever gonna make merch? Oh, I'm sorry I missed that comment. Maybe one day. I don't know. I was considering it for some time. And do you think a Civil War game could ever work, or the battle formations it feels too hard to translate to gameplay? Well, Max, they did do War of Rights. I know there was that game on PC, but I never played that, so I don't know how that game went. There was a few games that did try to do Civil War games. There was a History Channel Civil War game, but that game really sucked. Stay away from that game. I think I might have free aim disabled on my horse. Let me see here. Fallout 3 playthrough when? Yes, I do have free aim disabled on my horse. Okay. Fallout 3 playthrough. I could do a Fallout 3 playthrough. Okay, got him. Great, Lancaster probably. Yup, Lancaster. I could do a Fallout 3 playthrough later in the year, maybe near December, maybe like next year. What? I don't know where that second shot went. Okay, well that was at least a good shot on his part. Look, I'm using the Litchfield, a gun that no one uses. Let's use another gun that nobody uses, the Springfield rifle. See, you can kill people with the Springfield rifle. People say the Springfield rifle sucks. No, you can kill people with this. Damn, okay. Who's more dangerous, John or Arthur? I would say probably, Arthur. Arthur just has more experience than John, but John did live a lot longer, too. Oh, I'm sorry that happened to your mom. I hope that she's okay, Couch. I think Red Dead Redemption Undead only 60 FPS on PS5, not PS4 Switch. Well, it should be able to run on PS4 because it's a PS4 version. I can't even tell who's friendly or not coming down there. Okay, friendly, and then everyone behind him is hostile. Well, I hit someone's horse. Damn. Okay. Thank you, Blinded Eagle, and thank you, Sloppy McFloppy, and thank you, Variant. Thanks, man. Thank you, Sleep Punch, man. Speaking of jobs, I was almost fired at my job at UPS because I was at a slow pace since I was new to it. So I fought for my soreness. I fought my soreness, and I still have a job. I'm sorry that happened to you, Sleep Punch. Man, you know what? Let me guess. I bet I know what happened at your job. Is those idiots that those idiot supervisors? What they probably did is they probably gave you barely enough training, right? They only gave you training maybe like what, half an hour at most, and then they left you there by yourself. Probably is that probably what happened? Because that's what happens at most of those places. Is they barely give you any training. And then they train you for like maybe half an hour, and then they leave you there, don't even help you at all, and then they get pissed off when you're going slow. That happens in a lot of these places. You know, don't think too much about it. A lot of these companies are really stupid how they run things. But yeah, there's a lot of companies that do crap like that. Am I right on that? Is that what they did to you, Sleep? What was the biggest milestone for the U.S.? Abolishing slavery or civil rights? Well, slavery was, you know, the biggest, abolishing slavery was the biggest milestone. It was, you know, it's a shame that Lincoln died, because if Lincoln was alive, and was president after the Civil War, you probably would not have had segregation happen. Andrew Johnson was a terrible president. What's your favorite movie and TV show? Favorite movie, I would say, would probably be Scarface. Favorite TV show? More recent, I would say, would probably be Twisted Metal, but, like, just all-time favorite TV show, I would say, probably have to be The Sopranos. Did Sleep comment again? Thank you, Max. Thank you, Variant. I think I saw every super chat. You ever had a moment where a person stared at you? Yeah, they did. XD9, I've had that happen to me. I think everyone's had a moment where somebody stared at them. Did Sleep comment again? Let me see. Did Sleep, will I ever play Mortal Kombat 1? Probably not, Variant, because I'm not into fighting games, but I will play Fight Night Champion. That's a fighting game that I do want to play. They trained me to stack boxes and forfeit each trailer when my points were like 225. My boss said she would fire me if I don't reach 300 or more. So the next day I made it to 600 packages by the end. Man, I'm sorry that you went through that, but did they like barely give you did they barely give you any training though, Sleep? Did that also happen? And thank you, Specialist, for being a member for thank you for 1.5 years. I'm not gonna get into politics though, Miles. I know Lincoln abolished slavery, but wasn't he also quite racist? Yes, that is true. Lincoln was kind of racist when he was younger, and also when he ran as president. But after the Emancipation Proclamation, when Lincoln just saw that there was just so many people that were grateful for being freed, he gradually did start to shift his views in his later years before he died. And so I think that if Lincoln was president, you know, still, I think that I think Reconstruction would have been handled a lot better if Lincoln was president, and I think that you probably would not have had segregation in the South. I don't think that probably would have happened. I worked for Amazon, and it was the worst job of in my life. Andy, I know how you feel though. One of my good friends in real life also worked for Amazon. He worked as a delivery driver, and he would just tell me the horror stories about how, like, the supervisors were just constantly texting him, and they were just, like, saying, like, you know, where are you? We want updates, and they would just, even if he's in traffic, they would just constantly be rushing him. It was ridiculous. Well, they taught me how to put bags on top of the packages, and it was hell when the packages were on the floor. I couldn't even get out. I was assigned with 3 trailers, like, wow. And let me ask you this, Sleep. When they trained you, did they just leave you by yourself after they trained you? Because, like, a lot of places do that, and I really hate when jobs do that. Has that happened to anybody where you get like a new job, right? And the new job that you get, you know, the place that you're working at, right? They train you for maybe like half an hour, and then afterwards they just leave you by yourself. They leave you by yourself. They don't help you. They think that half an hour is enough to know how to do the job just as good as them. And then they get all pissed off at you when you have questions and you don't know how to do things. So that's I hate when companies do that. It's disgusting. Would I consider playing Gun PS2 game? It's a Western game, right? I could probably play that one day. Thank you, Dragon Fury 3000. Sometimes they do that. They come back minutes later to ask me questions, what to do, to ask me questions, what to do situations. I'm sorry you're going through that, Sleep. Well, thank you, Ralph, for the super chat, but I'm not gonna, like, read out lines because I don't know what that's referencing. I don't know what that means, so I'm just gonna, you know, I'm not gonna read that because I just don't know if that's something, I don't know what that means. Will you do a lore video on Arthur Morgan? Maybe one day, but I wanted to do a video on Micah one day specifically. Will you do a lore video on Arthur Morgan? Oh, that was, I just read that one. Thank you, Silver, for the super chat. Why is union membership in America so low? Thank you, CO, F Drip, if I'm reading your name correctly. Because companies make it really hard to be able to join a union, and they strongly oppose it. Now look, you know, I'm not ignorant. I know there's some unions out there that, like, take advantage of places. I get that, and they're unreasonable. However, though, in most cases, you will have the bosses are more unreasonable than the unions in most places, in most cases. So, while I don't deny that there's unions that take advantage of, like, you know, places where they work, there are a lot more situations where you have a scumbag boss taking advantage of his workers. And, you know, and I'm a guy who's like, you know, I'm a guy who typically likes small government, I like low taxes, but I do believe very strongly that if you sign a contract, if a business signs a contract with a union, then they have to adhere to those union rules. They have to. And so for the most part is, you know, if I was working like, you know, like a job going to the office or something like that, I'd rather pay a fee to a union and at least know that the union has my back, then, like, rely on the company, know that the company isn't gonna screw me over. So that's personally, yeah, that's what I would say about that. Thank you, CEO, for the super chat. Have you ever thought about doing a playthrough of Manhunt for the 20th anniversary, November 18th? I could possibly do that. Thank you, Blue Demon, for the super chat. Though most of my playthrough is probably gonna get demonetized by YouTube. Let me see here. In your opinion, was Lincoln the greatest U.S. president? I personally think Washington was. He led the victorious revolution against the British Empire. I think that in the, I think that you have a great president for every era. I think that I would say in the 1900s, between the year 1900 to the year 2000, the greatest U.S. president between 1900 to 2000, I would say, was Teddy Roosevelt. Greatest president between the year 1800 and 1900, I would say would probably have to be a Lincoln. Greatest president when the country was founded until the 1800 would probably have to be George Washington. I think that George Washington would probably have to be the most important U.S. president. I know that George Washington wasn't a perfect person. I know he did some horrible things. But if it wasn't for him, though, we wouldn't have a country, because nobody else could have defeated the British like he did. You know, he did rely on the French a lot, too, but the thing about George Washington, what a lot of people don't understand about George Washington is they say that George Washington wasn't a good general. George Washington wasn't the greatest general. There were generals that were smarter and better than him. However, though, George Washington had a quality that the other generals didn't have. and that was that he was the most competent general. So while he wasn't tactically the best general, he was the most competent general. That's what I would say about him. So without George Washington, the United States really would not exist. If he was like taken out early in the war, we probably would have lost the war. Or darn, can you say hi to Kobe for me? Well, hello to Kobe. Is he a friend of yours? Thank you for the super chat, Ralph. Didn't Grant enforce martial law during Reconstruction? I'm not sure they could have done more constitutionally, plus added so many amendments already. The Republicans wasted political capital. Let's see here. Oh, there's a bounty nearby here. Let's see about going for that bounty. Thank you, Max, for the super chat. But Grant did not take over until many years later. You know, many years later, Grant took over. And, if Grant was, like, president, like, right when the, if Grant was president right when the, Reconstruction was happening, I don't think Grant would have allowed segregation. I don't think he would have. Like, if Grant was president, like, right after Lincoln died, I don't think he would have allowed that to happen. But the thing about that is once those laws were passed by the southern states, once the southern states made those laws, you would need federal laws to be able to change that. And to get federal laws to change that, you would need a lot of states to vote on that, and that was just so hard at that time. So the best way to prevent segregation was they had to stop it right at the start. But we had Andrew Johnson, which Andrew Johnson was the one who really messed up America. Like, he's one of the worst presidents we've ever had. Like, he did a lot of really bad, messed up racist things, like, right after he took power after Lincoln died. And so he was the one who largely supported segregation. And the southern states passed that, and then the southern states made it very, very difficult for the federal government to abolish that. Let me see here. Oh, we killed him already? We got him already here? But yeah, that's why I think if Lincoln was alive, because we had such a great President Lincoln, and it's such a shame that he was taken away from us. It's such a shame that we lost him. Like, we lost him right when the Civil War ended. It just sucks. He got assassinated by a scumbag. Thank you, Max, for the super chat. How would you compare Lion's Brotherhood of Steel to Maxon's Brotherhood of Steel? Well, Max, you're talking about Fallout then, right? Well, Maxon is a scumbag. I don't like Maxon. I think he's a scumbag. Because the thing about the Brotherhood of Steel is the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 4 is, like, really selfish. Like, have you noticed that? Like, the Brotherhood of Steel does not care at all about the common citizens of the Commonwealth. They don't. Like, they care about, they're like, oh, we're protecting humanity, we're stopping the Institute. But while the Brotherhood of Steel is not kidnapping people and doing experiments like the Institute is, they're not really doing anything to help people. They're really doing kind of similar things to the Institute, where they're coming in and all they're doing is they're hoarding technology, and then they're saying, we're here saving the Commonwealth. Well, what are you doing to really save the Commonwealth? You really aren't doing anything. So that's, I would say that Lion's Brotherhood of Steel was way better than Maxon's, because Lion's Brotherhood of Steel actually helped people. Like, when they came to the Capital Wasteland in Fallout 3, they were originally there to get pre-war technology, but when they realized that so many people needed help, they decided to help people first and then focus on technology second. And that's, the way to go about it. But Maxon, all he cares about is technology, doesn't even care about helping people. If you are not a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, they basically say, you know what, screw you, you don't matter. So that's what I'll say about the Brotherhood of Steel. They're kind of scumbags. And also, here's the thing about this. If you are a civilian in the Fallout world, and you own, like, for example, like a plasma laser, or you own, like, a plasma rifle, if you own, like, a laser rifle or a plasma rifle, for example, the Brotherhood of Steel is going to confiscate that. They're going to take that from you. It's like, why should you give up your gun to them? It's like, you paid for that. That's your gun. You should not give that up to them. So they really have no right to take that from you. Hey Pro, did you hear about that representative who pulled the fire alarm during a Congress vote? Not trying to get political here. Yes, I did hear about that. I'm not trying to get into politics or anything like that. I stay away from that. But if you're gonna, pull a fire alarm because you don't like a specific vote, I don't care what political party you're from, you are an idiot. You are an idiot, and you're also putting people's lives at risk. Because when you pull a fire alarm, that causes a panic. Somebody can trip, people can get stomped on and die. And so that politician who pulled that fire alarm is an idiot. That's basically what I'm going to say about that. I don't care what their politics was, they're an idiot. You can't pull a fire alarm because you disagree with the vote that's going on. For the guy complaining about super chats, who's complaining about super chats? Thank you, Fernando. A Garfield Kart Let's Play? I've never heard of that game. What is that game? Do you think that Red Dead be set to roads or that? Wait, what do you mean set to roads? I don't understand. Can you explain? I gotta feed my horse. Thank you, RIP. Thank you for the super chat. Best president from 2000 to 2023, I don't speak modern politics. I stay away from that. Maxim's Brotherhood of Steel sounds more like the Enclave to me. Gamers even compare them to the Nazis. No, I would not say that Maxim is, Maxim's Brotherhood of Steel are very, selfish, but I wouldn't call them fascistic. The Enclave are fascists. The Enclave basically want to kill everybody who's not a member of the Enclave. The Brotherhood don't really want to kill everybody who's not a member of the Brotherhood, but they don't care about them either. That's the difference between them. So, the Enclave is much worse than the Brotherhood. The Enclave is a fascist organization. Thank you, Silver Fox Lane, for the super chat. Let me see here. Let's go to Tumbleweed, actually. Still plan on making that Canon Lynch 2 multiplayer video? Yes, I do, and you're more than welcome to play with me if you want to, dearly. If you play on the PS3, you can play with me on that. I want to fill up a full lobby, so eventually I want to go on Canon Lynch, and I want to, get up full of a full PS3 lobby, and if anybody has Canon Lynch on PS3, you can play with me. So that's, Canon Lynch 2. On the Fragile Alliance mode. Maxim is also 21 in Fallout 4, and he's, Elder. He's racist, arrogant, selfish, and a hypocrite. He has cybernetic implants in his brain, also Elder. The thing about that is, how is he 21? He doesn't look like he's 21 to me. Maybe he looks like he's in his, late 20s, but he doesn't look like he's 21. Video games do a terrible job of, showing people's age. He doesn't even look like he's 21 to me. But yes, you're right, he is 21, because he was only a child in Fallout 3. So that's, Thank you, Lendon, for the super chat. Hey, Pro, haven't caught up with your stream for a while. Busy preparing for a midterm exam. Have you seen the recent, mass shooting in Thailand? No, I didn't hear about it. Well, what happened? Thank you, Patrick, for sponsoring my channel. I'm letting you know you're my favorite YouTuber. You have helped me through some tough times, and your content keeps me in good spirits. Thanks, bro. Thank you, Joseph Ellison. Thanks, man. NCR, Legion, House, or Yes Man? I can already eliminate two groups from that. Definitely not Legion, and definitely not NCR. I can't stand the NCR, and I can't stand the Legion. So it's either between Mr. House and Yes Man. I would say Mr. House. Probably going with Mr. House. Yes Man would be my second option. Mr. House at least has a plan. He knows what he's doing. And Mr. House has been ruling Vegas for a long time. So that's what I'll say is, the thing about that is that the NCR claims that they're representing old America. But the ironic thing about that is that the character that represents, the faction that represents American ideology the most is probably Mr. House. Mr. House is probably the most American ideologue, character in that game. Because, Mr. House is basically libertarian. That's pretty much what he is, which is what the country was founded on. Really, when the U.S. was first founded as a country, the forefathers were largely libertarian. That's pretty much what they would be. Most of them politically today, if they were still alive. But yes, that's what I would say. Is Mr. House probably represents more of more American ideology is probably than what the NCR is actually. Wouldn't Nuka-Cola be dangerous in real life? Well, I don't know what it's made out of. I don't even drink Coca-Cola. Thank you, Max, for this super chat, and thank you, Bunny. Thanks for the super chat too, and thank you, Nove. Pro, a couple days ago, my catalytic converter almost got stolen. I know you're not a car guy. Is there some tip how to deter thieves from stealing them? Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the part that's underneath your car, right? That's what I know that I've heard that term before. I've heard that term, people steal it. Honestly speaking, there might not really be much that you can do. I guess it would depend on how the converter is installed. You could try to install it like a specific way, specific screws, maybe make it very difficult for it to be removed. But when it comes to like getting rid of like protecting your car, there really isn't much more that you can do. The best thing that you can do to protect your car from thieves is watch where you park. That's probably the best thing that you can do. The worst possible place that you can park your car is you can park your car in a dark place where it's not very well lighted, doesn't have a lot of visibility. That is probably the worst place that you can park your car. The best place that you can park your car is a very well-lit area, a very public area, and preferably a place that has security cameras. And yes, thieves look for that. They look for security cameras in areas. And so if you park your car in an area near that, it's much less likely to get broken into. Do you know what the stupidest thing that people do with their cars? The stupidest things that people do is what people do is that when they park their car, they leave their laptop bag on like the front passenger seat, or they will leave their smartphone in the cup holder. Like they'll leave their iPhone in the cup holder, and and they lock their car and they think, oh, my phone's safe, my car's locked. Thieves walk around the side of the car. They see your fancy iPhone in like a cup holder. They're gonna smash that window and they're gonna grab your iPhone. So one of the things that you can do to prevent thieves from breaking into your car is have nothing of value in the front seat of your car. Nothing whatsoever. That's what I do is, there is a shopping plaza that is, that's near my parents' house in New York, where my parents go to that shopping plaza. And so what they do is they park their car in the shopping plaza. And what my parents do is when they're walking in between stores, like they'll go to one store, they'll shop at like maybe a clothing store, then they'll shop at a grocery store. And what my parents used to do in the past is when they would stop at their car to drop the bags off before going to another store, they would like put it on the back seat or they would put it in the front seat. And I was like telling them, Mom, Dad, I'm like, don't do that. Like, I would tell them, put it in the trunk. If you're gonna put something, put it in the trunk so that the thieves don't see it. If you just buy a bunch of clothes and you put it in shopping bags and you just leave it on like the back seat or the front seat, thieves are gonna see that and they're gonna break into your car. So if you want to avoid people breaking into your car, one of the things that you can do is put stuff out of sight. Make sure it's not in plain sight. So when somebody's walking by the car, they don't see a phone, they don't see a laptop, keep that away, because if you do that, you're making your car like more of a target. As for like the catalytic converters though, man, I don't think there's really anything that you can do just to stop thieves from that. I think that I'll revive here. I don't think there's really much more. The only thing that you could do to stop them from breaking into your, stealing your catalytic converters is to park in a very public place. That's probably would be the best thing to do. But even if you park in a public place, sometimes you might encounter thieves that don't care. I'll give you like an example. There was this Italian gang that was in my neighborhood. This wasn't they weren't connected to the mafia, but I think they traded with the mafia. That's what I think it was. But this is where I grew up. This is where I grew up in New York City, and this was I remember in the early '90s. In the early '90s and the early 2000s, this happened a lot. But basically, what these guys would do is these guys like ran like a chop shop. And I think that they did have connections to the Italian mafia, but I know they weren't mafia themselves. I think they were more like associates. But basically, what these guys would do is they would strip a car. Like they would take the wheels off the car. They would break in the car. They would steal the radio. They would steal all the parts. I'm not a car guy, so I don't know what their car. But they would steal all the parts of the car. And what they would do afterwards is they would set the car on fire. I don't know why they would do that. Why they set the car on fire, but they would do that a lot of times. And so a lot of times in my neighborhood, a car will be completely stripped of its parts, and then the car will be set on fire. So I don't know what the purpose of that last part was, but they would do that. And what ended up happening is my street had no more cars got broken into on my street, and no more cars got set on fire. Do you know why that stopped? Because what happened was there was a big gym that opened down the street from my house. It was like right down the street from my house. And what ended up happening is that gym had like cameras that were all around. This was like a really big building on like an intersection. When those cameras got put in, there was no more cars that would get stolen in that area. Like the 3 blocks radius, there'd be no more cars. And the reason for that is because even if they strip parts from a car that's that's not in front of the cameras. Let's say that they decide to steal from a car that's like 2 blocks away from the gym, right? Chances are they're gonna have to pass by the gym because the gym is at an intersection. And so what the police are gonna do is the police are gonna look at see what time did the car get stolen, like what time did the parts from the car get stolen. They're gonna go to the gym and they're gonna tell the gym, like, we want to see your security footage from this time, and they're gonna see who's walking by in that area, who's driving by in that area. And that's why basically all of the cars stopped getting broken into, because of that gym. That gym ironically saved my area because of all the cameras that it put in. So that's how it stopped it. And for people wondering, my dad's first car did get stolen. He lost his first car. So I don't remember what model it was, but he lost his first car in the neighborhood. His car didn't get set on fire. The entire car actually got stolen, so it got taken away. He never got it back. And his car probably doesn't even exist anymore. It probably got completely stripped down for parts. But that's basically, that's what you can do, really, is park in public areas, park in areas possibly with cameras, and there really isn't much more that you can do, and you can hope that they're not stupid enough to actually break into your car and steal stuff from your car. Other than that, there really isn't much more that you can do. I can't really think of anything else you can do. Also, what you could do is, I guess, park in your driveway and park in your garage if you have one. Because thieves are a lot less likely to walk up to your driveway if they see a car in a driveway. They're much more likely to break into a car if they see it on the street. That'd be another thing you can do to reduce it. Let me see here. I missed a bunch of comments. I'm sorry. His full name is Robert House. Yup, and he's Robert House is 200 years old. Dobry wieczór. Good afternoon to you too, Roman. Thank you. Thank you for stopping by. Kind of messed up in Fallout 4. You had to destroy your own son in the end. Well, I guess it depends on the ending that you're doing. But yeah, your son is just completely brainwashed into that Institute ideology. But the thing about that is the first time that I played Fallout 4, I knew that he was older. Like, I knew that he was an adult. I knew that. And the reason for that, well, it wasn't like a shocker to me, is because when I was playing the game the first time, what I noticed is you wake up when your son's getting taken, and then after your son getting taken, you get frozen again. And so at that point, I was basically thinking to myself, well, they didn't tell us what year he got taken, and so he probably got frozen another amount of years. That's probably what ended up happening. So I figured that he was probably years had passed by, because I couldn't imagine like finding like a baby. I couldn't imagine that. So I knew that he had to be like older. I'm putting a hidden battery kill switch in my car. Thank you, Sensitivity, for the super chat. What do you mean hidden battery kill switch? What is that specifically? There's a 14-year-old performed mass shooting in the mall, initially alleged to video game, but there are more than that. Well, look, what I'll tell you is, when people try to blame video games for violence, I personally think that that's stupid. Because the thing about this is, look, here's what I'm telling you guys. I play, GTA. GTA is my most played game on my channel. I have over 470 days played on GTA Online. Not joking. 470 days played. And I have over 1 year of my life played on GTA Online. And not once in my life have I ever wanted to sell drugs, meth, coke, or anything like that. Not have I ever once in my life wanted to steal cars. Not once in my life have I wanted to shoot somebody, and not once in my life have I wanted to fly around on a futuristic motorcycle and blow people up. I've never wanted to do any of that stuff. So, this idea that, like, violent video games are, like, somehow, like, contributing to violence, I don't believe it. I don't think that it's true, because the thing about that is, we play games like Grand Theft Auto because they let us play as criminals. We're able to play as criminals. Like, nobody wants to be a criminal in real life, but you get to see, like, the criminal's perspective in, like, a video game. And so we get to play as the criminals. That's why gangster movies and gangster games are so popular, because you get to see the perspective of the criminal. But that doesn't mean that people that like gangster games and gangster movies doesn't mean that they want to be gangsters. Gangster games are some of my favorite, games, but I despise gangsters. I despise criminals. So that's, I went to school for law enforcement. I finished a bachelor's degree in law enforcement. So just because I like crime games doesn't mean that I want to commit crimes or something like that. But here's what I tell you about the violent video games is the what these people never look at is what happens is, and I wrote a paper on this. I wrote a 22-page paper in college. My final paper in college for my senior project for my law enforcement degree. I decided to choose the topic of violent video games and if they contribute to real-world violence. And I looked up studies, I wrote this entire detailed paper on it, and I changed my teacher's perspective. My teacher believed, he was a DEA agent. He was a DEA agent for like 20 years or so. That's Drug Enforcement Administration. And he believed that violent video games, caused real-world violence or contributed to it. He wasn't a bad guy or anything. He was a nice guy. But, he just had a very, I would say, ignorant view of it. Because he didn't play video games, he didn't understand it too well. He's an older guy. And I convinced him with my paper. He told me that I convinced him. But basically, the research about violent video games is there is no concrete study that proves that violent video games contribute to real-world violence. None. And what happens is when there is a study, because there are occasional studies that come up where they say, this study proves that violent video games contribute to like real-world violence. The studies that prove that violent video games contribute to real-world violence, the media is 10 times more likely to report on those studies than on studies that show that violent video games do not correlate to real-world violence. And 9 out of 10 studies actually show that violent video games do not impact real-world violence. The media is only more likely to report on the studies that show that violent video games do contribute to real-world violence because the media is a business. And so it's clickbait. It's more money for them. That's basically how the whole, media empire works. Is, it's not about truth. It's just about getting those clicks and those views and getting those ads for them and the money. That's what it is, selling more newspapers. It's not about, the truth. But that's how the media operates. It's a business. They make money. So people need to understand that before you see the media saying that, violent video games cause real-world violence. And the politicians do the same thing. When politicians are running for violence, they're running for office, not violence. When they're running for office and politicians people ask them about violence, politicians can make video games an easy scapegoat. Oh, the reason there's so much violence is because of video games. That's what the stupid mayor in Chicago did. The mayor in Chicago, the one before this one, Lori, I think her name was, she blamed video games for carjackings in Chicago. Like, she blamed GTA for carjackings in Chicago. No. If GTA was the reason that you had, for carjackings, you'd have carjackings in a lot more other places. The reason that carjackings are so out of control in Chicago, it's not because of video games, it's because of a lack of policing, and it's also because of gangs. Most of these carjackings are linked to the gangs in the South Side. That's why you have so much carjackings in Chicago. It's not because of the video games, but the mayor of Chicago, she was an idiot. So that's, so politicians and the media will both blame, video games for it. So there is no concrete study that shows that video games contribute to real-world violence, and I don't believe it. And, occasionally what happens is, you have some idiot occasionally, where this idiot will commit real-world violence. So it's happened before. You've had people commit real-world violence. And when they get arrested and they're asked, why did you do this? Why did you hurt these people? You've had a few idiots. It doesn't happen a lot, but you've had a few idiots where they say, oh, it's because I played GTA. You've had a few idiots that have said that. And what happens is the media jumps on these stories and they say, oh, look, this is proof that video games cause real-world violence. But do you know what the media does not investigate? The media does not investigate the mental health of that person. Because the psycho guy, if somebody goes and starts stealing a bunch of cars, and then they get arrested and they say, I did it because of Grand Theft Auto, the media is just going to say, oh, it's because of Grand Theft Auto, but they're not going to look at the person's mental health. They're not going to look at if the person was messed up beforehand. Because I'm telling you, if somebody decides to start, carjacking because they play Grand Theft Auto, that person had issues before they even sat down and played Grand Theft Auto. if a crazy person, if like a psycho person plays a violent video game, technically yes, they could get an inspiration from a game and they might try to recreate a scene from a game. But that's not the fault of the game, that's the fault of the person, because the person has issues before they even played the game in the first place. No rational person sits down and says, I'm gonna, start, stealing cars because I saw it on Grand Theft Auto. No normal person is going to do something like that. No rational person is going to do that. The person already has, massive issues, and they have, serious issues that they need help with before they even play the game in the first place. Nobody's going to sit down and decide, they're going to kill people or something like that because they play a violent game. So I wish that when the media was like reporting on these things, they would do a much better job of it, and also politicians. But that just video games are just an easy thing for politicians to scapegoat. And the thing about this is, people scapegoat a lot of things. A lot of times, it's not just video games. They used to do this, in the 1950s, they used to do this with rock and roll. When rock and roll came out in the 1950s, you know what they would say? They say, the reason kids are committing crimes is because of rock and roll. They actually said that in the 1950s. That was an actual excuse that the media would say. They would say the rock and roll is the devil's music, and this is, why kids are committing violent crimes, because of rock and roll. And then what ended up happening is, when it was, next thing was violent movies. Oh, it's because of the violent movies that kids are committing games. And then it was too much television. That's why kids are committing violence. And now it's violent video games. So it's always onto something. They never blame the person. They never ask, why is this person committing crimes? Instead, they just blame like video games. Video games doesn't have anything to do with that. People are responsible for their own actions. That's what it is. I'm never gonna harm somebody because I play a violent video game. I'm not gonna do that. Hi, Professional. I hope everything is doing well. How are you doing? I tried to start a business recently, but I got set up, and I lost almost $2,000. Oh, I'm sorry that happened to you, buddy. What kind of business was it, if you mind me asking? But I hope that everything works out for you. I'm sorry that happened to you, man. And sorry about my rant on the video games thing, guys. But I get so annoyed when I see like the media who just constantly talks about video games when they don't know what they're talking about. Let me see here, who do you think killed Jimmy Hoffa? Probably the Mafia. He's probably dead. Somebody disappears for that long, they're probably dead. And that's the guy who disappeared, right? I'm pretty sure Jimmy's the one who disappeared. My mom thinks I would do violence in real life. I like why? Thank you, Sleep Punch, for the super chat. It's a lot of older people. They're not used to video games, and so they look at that and they basically think that that's gonna cause violence, but it's not. It's stupid to blame video games, I agree, but the majority of people in Thailand don't see it that way. And it's unfortunate that there's a lot of people that... even in my country, in the US, you will have, like, a lot of older people that still think that they think that, like, violent video games cause real-world violence. I don't know any young people, honestly. Like, anybody that's, like, within their 20s or 30s, I don't know anybody even younger than that. I don't know one person that honestly thinks that, like, violent video games cause real-world violence. Just played GTA 5, and I'm currently hijacking... Playing what? Well, thank you for the super chat, Sloppy. 1923 TV series is worth the watch, similar to Red Dead Redemption. Isn't that the same universe as Yellowstone? Thank you, Dragon, for the super chat. Thoughts on the followers of the Apocalypse and East Coast Brotherhood? Both are kind of Christian, in my opinion. Well, East Coast Brotherhood helps people. I don't really know that much about the followers of the Apocalypse. I know they're not, like, selfish, but I don't know that much about them, Max. I've played games like Yakuza, GTA, Watch Dogs, Sleeping Dogs, Saints Row, Battlefield, Call of Duty, and I never thought, hey, let's go commit crimes. The media's a joke. Yeah, they are. Exactly. Kid found out later he has a mental problem. Yeah, so, like I said, no rational person is gonna go and, play a game like GTA and decide that they're gonna, commit crimes. People do the same with guns too, Pro. Did you hear about what anti-cop activist who was killed in the streets in Brooklyn? I don't know about the activist thing. I don't know what you're talking about, Mario specifically. But I would agree with that. Also, is that a lot of times people scapegoat guns, firearms, and they blame firearms for like a lot of violence, but I don't necessarily think that it's the firearms either. I think that it's more of the person, because When I was younger, I used to think that it was I used to think that it was the firearms. I used to think that like guns were a huge part of the problem. But I changed like my mind on that like when I got like past like high school and college and stuff like that. And where I live in like where I moved to in the Midwest, specifically like Midwest is very different culturally than New York. I moved to like a large town, kind of maybe like a very small city. And the thing about this is, where I live, so many people carry guns, and there's almost no gun violence. I watch my local news all the time, and I don't see any shootings or anything like that happening. And so for me, that personally tells me that it's not the guns that's causing the issues. It's more the gangs, the criminals, and and people people who have people who are insane. People who have serious issues. So I don't think it's necessarily the firearms that are to blame. That's just my personal opinion. Feel free to disagree with me, but that's just my personal viewpoint on it. I love your shirt. Thank you, man. Remember what gamers will look like in 20 years? That I never forgot about that. I remember that was in 2019, and so we got what 16 years left on that to see what we look like in 16 years from now. See here okay, it was an e-com business. The guy basically hacked my social media and started asking my friends to give him money. He then tried to launder $10,000. That's horrible, buddy. Did you get law enforcement involved? I hope that you got law enforcement involved. I'm still visiting, but I'm gonna leave in a few days, Shadow. Thoughts on the people who unironically play Genshin Impact? Well, I know that's a game that's on the PlayStation Store, but I don't know anything about that. Thank you, Diaz, for that super chat. I don't know much about that game. I think Arena Wars needs a better payout. Thank you, Joseph. Why would you move to the Midwest? A few reasons. I wanted to move to a different place. I wanted to, see another part of my country, because I spent, my entire life in New York. I wanted to move to a place that was colder. I like the cold. I don't like the heat. I live in the upper Midwest, so like, the northern Midwest. What it was is, like, a lot of my friends in New York, like most New Yorkers, when they want to go to a more affordable place, they typically go to Florida. I couldn't live in Florida. Nothing against Florida, but it's just too hot for me. I cannot take the heat. I like winters. And so that's, and also it's, Midwest is very affordable, which is the main reason that I moved to the Midwest, because it's like, I'm only spending like a fraction of, what I spend on taxes, for example, in the Midwest. Like, I save so much money, like living out here. It's, it's more business friendly, and it's just, nice, and its groceries are cheaper too, gas is cheaper, houses are way cheaper. If you want to buy a house here, you can buy a really nice house. It's not like, people think that it's like the Midwest, it's like people all live in trailer parks. It's not true. You can buy like a really nice house in my area, and you can buy like a 4-bedroom house in my area for like $300,000. Like, and it will be a nice house too. This will not be like a bad house. But like in New York, good luck finding a nice house for $300,000. It's gonna be probably a 2-bedroom. You might maybe you'll find a nice house for $300,000 in New York, but it's gonna be a very small house, very, very tiny. So it's definitely not gonna be a 4-bedroom house with a backyard. Pirated Switch version of Red Dead Redemption 1 getting 60 FPS with better mods. Do you think piracy makes better service than what Rockstar is doing? Thank you, Kool-Aid, for the super chat. I'm just not a fan of any kind of piracy in general. Even if the developer is a scumbag, I just don't agree with piracy. I just personally think that it's wrong, because there was people that did design the game in the end, and, you know, pirating something, I don't think it's very fair to the developer, because if you made something, you would not want somebody to pirate your product and sell that, or you know, give it away for free. You wouldn't want that. So I just don't think that that's fair on the, to the developer too. But I'm against piracy in, you know, all aspects, pretty much. However, though, I'm perfectly fine with, like, modding. Modding is something else. You know, just as long as it's not online modding, I'm fine with it for the most part. But when the developers try to, you know, go after that, I think that's stupid. Thank you, Kool-Aid, for the super chat. What's your opinion on React content? Speaking of React content, I don't know much about React. I know it's like a channel that obviously reacts to people. But what I will say about it is that scammer that was pretending to be me, there was like a scammer like a few months back that was pretending to be me. And he was posting like comments with like a fake professional name, and he was replying to people and telling them like, you want a giveaway, you know, message me on Telegram. And I messaged the scammer and I started trolling him and just pretending that I was interested, and I wasted his time for like 5 hours talking to him. And what I did was I even tricked that scammer into clicking on a link. And when the scammer clicked on the link, I grabbed their... Oh, I'm sorry, shot a player here by accident. When the scammer clicked on the link, I actually grabbed their IP address, and I was able to figure out where the scammer was. And I told the scammer their location, and I told them to stop. And they started arguing with me, and you know, telling me that they're gonna keep scamming my viewers, and they don't care and stuff like that. And I told them I'm gonna keep banning your accounts. And I told him that I'm gonna report him to the police. And I did actually file a police report, but he was in another country. He wasn't in the U.S. But I still did file a report with the police, but the police didn't do anything. But anyways, how this goes back to React, is the scammer who was impersonating me, after I blocked every single one of his accounts, he started impersonating React, and he pretended to be React. And so, the reason I know that is because when I looked at his Telegram account, I saw that he changed his name to React. And so he was then posting in React's comment section. I messaged React on Twitter, and I said to React, I said, you know, listen, this guy is, like, pretending to be you, and he's, like, trying to scam your viewers, and doing, like, fake giveaways. Like, please block him. And I sent him, like, screenshots of what the guy's account looks like and everything like that, but React never replied to me. So I'm assuming that React at least took care of it and had banned the guy. Vito, I can possibly invite you to my MC, like, not my MC, my posse right after this. It's just, yeah, just, hang on a second, I'm gonna... Okay, well, Vito, I'm not trying to kill you, I was just, let me see here, I missed a bunch of comments, I think. Thank you, Blinded Eagle and, Kool-Aid. The same thing happened to my mother in early 2022. They hacked her WhatsApp account contacts and asked them for money. Thankfully, all of her friends were not stupid and told her about that instantly. Yes, they will, there are hackers who will impersonate people, and they will send messages to their friends. And that's why my dad emails his friends in Poland a lot, and I tell my dad that if your friend sends you, like, a link, like, if it's just, like, a message, like, just a single email for, like, a link, there's, like, no text or anything like that, it's just, like, a single link, don't click on it. And I say, just email your friend and ask them, hey, did you send me a link? And, like, my dad's like, I don't want to send multiple messages. And I'm like, do it, just to be safe. Because people's accounts get hacked, and they'll send, like, a link to their friends, from their friend's email to their other friends, and they will just, they'll get a virus once they click on the link. Thank you, Alejandro, for the super chat. Thank you, Max. Hi, Pro. GTA fans had a part in ruining Saints Row 2022. It would be poetic justice if Saints Row fans do the same to GTA 6. What are the chances of that happening? No chance. Do you think that Rockstar is going to listen to Saints Row fans? They probably won't. The thing about that, and for people wondering how GTA fanboys ruined Saints Row, how they killed Saints Row, how that basically happened is Saints Row used to be a gangster game, Saints Row 1 and 2, and what happened was GTA fanboys kept attacking the developers of Saints Row and kept complaining to them, saying to them that, oh, you know, this game is, you know, is just a GTA clone, you know, it's no different than GTA, this game sucks, and the developers got so tired of that, they got so annoyed at that, they decided to change their game and make it completely different. And that's how the whole celebrity thing happened in Saints Row 3, and that's how the whole superpowers thing happened in Saints Row 4. And then in the Saints Row reboot, they tried to appeal to both people, and they tried to appeal to the people who like the gangster stuff, and they tried to appeal to the people who like the the crazy actions, celebrity stuff. And then what they did was they tried to appeal to other people also, and they tried to do all this politically correct stuff, and it just was a disaster. So they basically tried to go politically correct. They tried to appeal to the politically correct crowd, and they tried to appeal to also to the to the people who like the gangster stuff, and also people who like the celebrity stuff, and it was a massive disaster. It was just it went bad. So I blame GTA fanboys to an extent for ruining Saints Row also. Would you rather commit tax fraud or game piracy? Well, I'm not going to say which one I would rather commit, but I would say that game piracy is a much less serious offense than tax fraud. Let me see here. Opinions on Grover Cleveland. I think he's underrated. He called the coup in Hawaii illegal. Yes, he did. You are right on that. Thank you, Max the Confessor. Saints Row could have been a better game, but unfortunately, the developers should have just gone in the direction of Saints Row 2. But instead, instead of doing that, they, man, it was a disaster. Herbert Hoover was a better geologist than a president. The thing about Herbert Hoover is, Herbert Hoover, I would say, was a good president on foreign policy. When it came to dealing with other countries, he was a good president on that. Like, Herbert Hoover wanted us to get involved in World War II earlier. So if he was, president, we probably would have gotten involved in World War II earlier. However, though, Herbert Hoover was a disaster on economics. Like, when it came to the economy, he was absolutely terrible. He was horrible. The Great Depression happened under his watch. He didn't really do much to fix it. How incompetent was Woodrow Wilson? Well, Woodrow Wilson, I think, was like one of the worst American presidents of all time. I do think so. Woodrow Wilson greatly expanded the federal government's power. He was also a racist. He was extremely racist. Woodrow Wilson, what he also did was he promised the American voters that he would stay out of World War I. Like, he made that promise. Now, World War I is very different than World War II. A lot of people don't seem to understand that, but World War I is very different than World War II. In World War II, you had, you had a maniac that was invading countries and genociding peoples. But in World War I, it was you had a bunch of greedy empires and greedy monarchies that were just fighting each other, just trying to take their empires from each other. That's what World War I was. It was just basically just a big power game between a bunch of kings and queens. World War I was not necessarily a war that America had to get involved in. But Woodrow Wilson promised to the American public he wouldn't get involved in the war. The vast majority of the American public were against getting involved in the war. He still got the U.S. involved in the war. He did a draft where he got a lot of people killed in the war. And on top of that, what Woodrow Wilson also did was Woodrow Wilson suspended the First Amendment. A lot of people don't know that. He made it illegal to protest against the war. So if you protested against U.S. involvement in World War I, like if your son or daughter or your father got like drafted, if your family member basically got drafted and like forced to go and fight in World War I, and you protested against that, you get arrested. You'd be arrested under that. It was illegal to protest against world intervention in World War I under Woodrow Wilson, and so that's a lot of people don't know that he literally put his political opponents in prison. So I would say, yeah, Wilson was probably one of the worst U.S. presidents of all time. How can you suspend freedom of speech? You know, that definitely would put somebody in the top 5 worst U.S. presidents of all time category, suspending free speech. Okay. Here.
Is this funny for you? I'm getting bored.
Would you call Woodrow Wilson a dictator? He was still technically an elected official, but he really abused his power. Thank you, Dragon Gaming, for the super chat. You know what? Let's go to my moonshine business. Oh, I just remembered, in your World War I video, you made a mistake. You looked at the demographics of Tyrol, but looked at, the Austrian-Hungarian part, but Trentino is almost all Italian. Look, there was regions in that area that did have, you know, a sizable Italian group in it. However, though, Italy didn't just make claims to the land that a lot of Italians lived on. They made claims to the land where Slovenians and Croats lived. So, after, you know, Italy was claiming that they were fighting for freedom and fighting for, you know, for their people. But what they did was, here's the thing, this is why the Italian Empire is one of the most hypocritical empires in human history. The reason for that is because North Italy used to be part of Austria. So before it was the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, it was the Austrian Empire. The Austrians controlled North Italy. And what happened was, a lot of the Italians, they would have their culture destroyed. So the Italians were told, you weren't able to speak Italian, you had to speak German. Later on, the Austrians changed those policies in later years. But in the early years of the Austrian Empire's control of North Italy, they tried to destroy Italian culture and didn't let Italians speak Italian. Now, when the Italians built their empire and they kicked the Austrians out, the Italians conquered parts of Croatia, Slovenia, and what they did was they forced the Croats and the Slovenes to speak Italian. And they told them, you can't speak Croatian here, you can't speak Slovene here, you have to speak Italian. And so the exact same thing that happened to the Italians, they did the exact same thing to another people. And so that's why, you know, when like, I hear that they're trying to get, like, you know, their land back from the Austrians. Well, some of the land that the Austrians controlled was their land, sure, but the other parts of it didn't belong to the Austrians, didn't belong to the Italians, belonged to the Croats and the Slovenes. And that was, and so the Italians were trying to conquer their land during World War I. That happened. Thank you, Max, for the super chat. Get rid of Couch in the chat, he's being sus. Wait, what is he doing? Here, we're gonna sell this here. Oh, Bert Higgins, only... Well, I got 1 hour until a sale here. Yeah, Zach, I like the guns in Max Payne 2 a lot more than Max Payne 1. But here's the thing about this. Virtually every single country that fought in World War I, virtually every country that fought in World War I, fought in World War I for land. To steal land. That was for every country. Both the Allies and the Central Powers in World War I, they both fought to steal land from each other. That was what they were doing. In World War II, you know, the Allies were defending themselves from the Nazis and trying to stop fascism. But in World War I, you had both sides in World War I were trying to steal land from each other. I'll give you an example. The reason that Germany got involved in World War I was because they wanted to steal land from, they wanted to steal more land from France. That was the main reason that they had gotten involved in World War I. The main reason that Austria-Hungary got involved in World War I is because they wanted to colonize Serbia. That was what they did. They wanted to conquer Serbia and annex it. The main reason that Russia got involved in World War I is because Russia got humiliated by Japan in the 1904-1905 Russo-Japanese War, and so Russia wanted to prove to the rest of Europe that it was this big, great, strong power, and it was a disaster for them, and they were probably going to take, they were probably going to take more parts of Poland when they won the war. The reason the Ottomans got involved in the war is because they wanted to get southeastern Europe back. They wanted to annex that again. That's why they got involved in World War I. The reason that Bulgaria got involved in World War I is because Bulgaria wanted to take land from Serbia, a huge chunk of it from Serbia. And the reason that, I'm trying to think of all the other countries. The reason that Great Britain got involved in World War I, Great Britain got involved in World War I they claimed the reason was because Belgium got attacked, where Belgium had a treaty with Britain, but the main reason that Britain got involved in World War I was because they just wanted to take Germany's colonies. That was the main reason. And I'm trying to think of the other countries. What other countries was there in World War I? The Italians, the main reason that they got involved in World War I was because they wanted to take over parts of Croatia and Slovenia. They wanted to take that over. And the, what other, did I miss any other countries, big countries in World War I? And the reason, yeah, and the reason that France got involved in World War I was because they wanted to take Alsace-Lorraine back from Germany that they lost in the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. So basically, when you break it down, every single country in World War I, the main reason that every country got involved in the war is because they just want to take land from each other. That's all they did. And if you look at how did World War I end? When World War I ended, Britain and France took a bunch of colonies from Germany. No, the colonies didn't belong to Germany either. They belonged to the people that lived in those lands. But that was what they did. Like, what does taking, Germany's colonies have to do with defeating Germany when you really think about it? It was a big power game. It was the empires, the big monarchies just trying to take more colonies and just take more empire. That's what it ultimately was about. In World War II, for example, in World War II, the Axis were clearly the bad guys. The Axis were the evil faction. But in World War I, you didn't really have an evil faction in World War I. In World War I, they were both bad. Both sides were bad in World War I. You can argue that certain sides did, more worse things than others in World War I, but when it really comes down to it, the reason that they were all fighting in World War I is they were just trying to steal land from each other. Like, if you got like 100 historians together, and you got those 100 historians in a room, and you ask those 100 historians, who caused World War I? Who is to blame for World War II? If you asked 100 historians who is to blame for World War II, all 100 historians would tell you it's Germany. When Germany invaded Poland, that they started World War II. All 100 would tell you that. But if you got 100 historians in a room, and you asked them, who started World War I guarantee you there'd be massive arguments. Because World War I, everybody knows what started World War II. It was, a maniac in Germany that was trying to conquer Europe, and also, the crazy emperor and the shogun in Japan that was trying to conquer Asia. That's what caused World War II. But World War I, on the other hand, it's a more complicated war and what was caused by. It was a bunch of, greedy, sides that were just trying to take land for each other and to take empires. All the sides are pretty bad in World War I. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, the thing about that is that the U.S. claims that they got involved in World War I for democracy. That's not really true either. The thing about that is that, do you know what was the most undemocratic country in World War I? It was Russia. Russia was the most brutal authoritarian country in World War I, and Russia was part of the Allies at the start of the war. So that was so the reason that the U.S. didn't get involved in the war, it wasn't about democracy. It wasn't about that either. So it was a lot of people, for example, say that, like, the most pointless war in history was, like, Iraq War, or the most pointless war in history was the Vietnam War. While those wars were both stupid, World War I probably takes the cake as the stupidest war in human history. If I had to name the stupidest, dumbest war that was ever fought in human history, or the stupidest reasons, it would probably have to be World War I. World War I takes the king of the stupidest wars. There's the stupidest, reason that war started. That entire conflict could have been avoided. There was no avoiding World War II, because, Hitler was going to attack people regardless. Hitler is evil. He was going to start invading countries. But World War I, on the other hand, was completely preventable. It was just a bunch of, greedy kings and queens that just wanted to take over colonies from each other. That's pretty much what World War I was. It was just a giant mess. It was a giant land grab by a bunch of stupid empires. What do you think about communism? Well, communism doesn't work. It's a failure. Everywhere that it's been implemented, it's a disaster. It doesn't work. Let me see here. Let's start up a bounty. What do you think of James Buchanan? I think that James Buchanan is the worst president in American history. I do really think that. Because James Buchanan was the president he was the president before Lincoln, and he did absolutely nothing to reduce tensions during the before the Civil War happened, and he did nothing to stop the Confederacy from seceding, and in fact, he took the southern states' side a lot of times, and he blamed the northern states a lot. So James Buchanan, I would say, would probably be the worst president in U.S. history. I think a president that allows the Civil War to happen, because the Civil War is not, isn't something that that just happened when Lincoln became president. It was a mess that Lincoln inherited that mess from Buchanan. Buchanan could have stopped the Civil War from happening early on, but when the southern states were building massive armies, this is when they were still part of the U.S., they were building massive armies, and they were threatening to secede, they still haven't seceded, Buchanan did nothing. Absolutely nothing about that. So if Lincoln became president earlier, he probably could have stopped that before it got completely out of hand, but yeah, that's what I would say is Buchanan, and the fact that Buchanan blamed the northern states for that when it was clearly the southern states' fault for what happened. It was Buchanan is probably the worst president in American history, I would say. Andrew Jackson was probably the closest we got to having a dictator. You are right on that. Yes, I would agree with you. Jackson was probably the closest we ever had to having a dictator. He definitely was close to that. Jackson was very authoritarian in how he ran things. I'm trying to remember the court case, but what basically happened was the Native Americans took their case to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they said, you can't throw us off our land. And Jackson still did that regardless. He basically told the Supreme Court, I don't care, you're gonna stop me? You can't stop me. And so Jackson went basically against the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court did nothing to stop him. So I would say that Jackson was probably the closest time that we've had to having a dictator in the U.S. Yes, I would agree with you on that. I hope everyone's having a good time. Saints Row 2 is fun. The IRS appears in escort activity. What? I didn't know about that, Phoenix. Thank you. Bots Netflix all silent on the Western Front. I didn't watch Netflix's version. I did watch the 1970s movie, and I watched the 1930s movie, and I love both of them. Not excusing it, but this is basically all of history till World War I. For instance, 400 AD, Egypt was heavily Greek for 500 years, but the Copts changed that after Miaphysitism in a couple of decades. I don't know what that is. I don't know ancient history that well. I know modern history really good, but I don't know ancient history that well, Max. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate the super chat, but that's a really weird one, Paul. I'm not gonna answer that. Thank you, London. World War I was pretty much an empire, it was pretty much an empire, conquest competition. And here's the thing about this, is that if Germany and Austria-Hungary won World War I, the world would not be a better place if Germany and Austria-Hungary won World War I, because even though both sides were bad in World War I, if Germany and Austria-Hungary won World War I, do you know how the war would have ended if Germany had won that war? It would have ended the exact same way as World War I did, but the opposite way. So basically what Germany would have done is Germany would have taken all of Britain's colonies and all of France's colonies, and they would have bankrupted both France and Britain and put all the blame on France and Britain when they had just as equal blame. The best outcome to World War I would have been if they just signed a treaty. If all sides signed a treaty and agreed to stop fighting, that would have been probably the best outcome for everyone. But when you're literally going to blame one side for all of the entire war, when the other side has just as much, responsibility for starting the conflict, and bankrupting Germany was not a good idea, because then what happened when you bankrupted Germany is you literally had an extremist come to power, and the thing about that is the Kaiser Wilhelm, he was the king of Germany. Kaiser Wilhelm was not a good person. He was a bad man. But the thing about this is Kaiser Wilhelm was not evil. He was a bad man, but he wasn't evil, and there's a difference. Hitler was evil, so there's a difference. Wilhelm was bad, but Hitler was evil. And so that's the thing, is Hitler was 10 times worse than Wilhelm. Literally 10 times worse. So it was, by bankrupting Germany and kicking Wilhelm out, they basically created an open invitation for an extremist to take power, and that's one of the reasons the Nazis came to power so easily, is because Germany got pretty much bankrupted. So that was a really stupid thing that they did. King Wilhelm hated Hitler. That's true. The German king hated Hitler. So the German king, he was kicked out of Germany when the monarchy was abolished. He lived up until World War II started. He didn't see the end of World War II, but Wilhelm did see Hitler come to power, and he did see what the Nazis were doing. And he died, I think, 1940 or 1941. He didn't see the invasion of Russia, but he did see the German invasion of France. That he did see. And about Wilhelm, do you think Hitler was a psychopath? Most likely, yes. The thing about Wilhelm is, Wilhelm actually said that when Hitler came to power, he did a Kristallnacht, which, Kristallnacht, what that basically was when the Nazis were going around and they were smashing up Jewish stores and they were beating up Jewish people in the streets and murdering them. That's what Kristallnacht was. It was an angry mob of Nazis that were going around destroying Jewish stores and killing people in the streets. When that happened, Wilhelm was horrified by that. And a lot of people bring up the fact that Wilhelm was an anti-Semite. Now, Wilhelm was an anti-Semite. There's no question about that. He did not like Jewish people. However, even though Wilhelm was an anti-Semite, Wilhelm didn't want to genocide anybody. He didn't want to murder anybody. You know, yes, he was a racist. That is a fact. But he wasn't going to go and genocide entire peoples. That's the main difference between him and Hitler. And Wilhelm, even though he was an anti-Semite, was horrified. He's horrified by what Hitler had done in Kristallnacht. And Wilhelm had actually said that that for the first time in his life he was ashamed to be German on what Hitler had done. That's an actual quote for him. He said, the German king said he's the first time in his life he was ashamed to be German on when he saw what Hitler had done. And what Wilhelm had done is he wrote in his last will that he was not to be buried in Germany with the Nazis in power. So he wrote in his will that he doesn't want to be buried in Germany as long as the Nazis are in power. So people don't know that about Wilhelm's will also. And the thing about that is Wilhelm really embarrassed the Nazis with that, because when he died, that was in his will that he didn't want to be buried in Germany as long as Hitler was in power. Because what Hitler would do is Hitler would say several times that he was Wilhelm's successor, and imagine Wilhelm leaving in his will that he does not recognize the leader of Germany. So that are you lying? No. That was about it. Is I'm not totally defending Wilhelm. Like, Wilhelm was a bad man. You know, Wilhelm was, racist. You know, he was an anti-Semite. He also hated Polish people. You know, I'm Polish. You know, he was very racist against Polish people as well. But the thing about Wilhelm is Wilhelm was a racist, but he wasn't a genocidal maniac. That's the difference between him and Hitler. And so Wilhelm's not going to, commit mass genocide against people. Hitler is. And so that just shows that there's just a massive difference between the two leaders. Like, a lot of times people compare, like, Wilhelm to Hitler, but that's not an accurate comparison to make. Thank you, Blinded Eagle, for the super chat. Okay, let's see here. Normandy happened in 1944, yes.
I'm gonna make you regret this, you dumb piece of shit.
Well, World War I was pretty much the death of the empires, Max.
Mister Shit for brains.
Yeah, oh. That's definitely a thought there, Zach. Was Stalin a psychopath? I would think so, yes. Would you say North Korea is a monarchy? No, it's a dictatorship.
Hello? Oh my god!
Howdy.
Japanese government should admit Nanking massacre, just like Germany admitted their war crime. Here's what people don't understand. One thing about this, and this is a really sad thing, is that a lot of countries around the world, a huge chunk of countries, do not admit to their bad history. A lot of countries around the world, you would be very surprised on how many countries around the world do not admit to their bad history. One of the few countries that actually does admit to their terrible, evil past is Germany. Germany is one of those countries that they teach that very heavily in their education system, but there actually are not a lot of countries that that admit to their bad past. Most of the time, countries, when they depict their history, they try to protect themselves, they try to portray themselves as heroic, you know, good, and they try to blame, usually, things that they did, they try to blame on other people. That's usually what happens. You know, in my country, I can't speak for every state, but, you know, the state that I grew up in, for example, we learned about, you know, what the U.S. government did to Native Americans. You know, we learned about the horrible things that we did. But there's a lot of countries that they won't teach history that way. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some like schools in like the South, for example, that like teach that they teach that like that the Civil War didn't have anything to do with slavery when it did have, it was everything about slavery. But there's like a lot of people in like southern states, for example, where they believe that the Confederacy was like a force for good, and they believe that they were fighting for states' rights and they were fighting for freedom and all the other stuff. But they don't understand that this was largely a you know, a slave holding, you know, country. That was what that was about. It was a bunch of rich elites that brainwashed their people and told their people, you know, the North is trying to violate, you know, your way of life and everything like that. So there's so in the southern states in the U.S., there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that believe that stuff. I'm not attacking Southerners. The South's like a nice place. There's very friendly, nice people. But unfortunately, there's like a lot of people that believe that stuff. That they think that the Confederacy was like a force for good. But I'll tell you, the countries, two countries that I can say that are in Europe that do a really, really, really bad job of admitting to their history, their bad history, is Turkey and Russia. Those are two countries that admit to their they don't admit to their history, their bad history. Let me see. Let's go public by it. For example, in Turkey, in the way that they're taught, I don't know exactly what the Turkish schools teach, but I know that the way that the Turkish government acts, the Turkish government denies the Armenian genocide. They claim that never happened. And so that's, they deny that. The Russia, on the other hand, they deny the atrocities that Stalin had committed to a huge extent. Like, Russia does not recognize the Holodomor, for example, which was the massive famine that happened in Ukraine where millions of Ukrainians died. When we're talking about Asia, we talk about two other countries in Asia. We talk about China and Japan. China does not recognize the millions of people that died under Mao Zedong. They don't recognize that. They don't teach that. Japan, while Japan in recent years has started talking more about their war crimes in their education system, Japan to this day still denies a lot of the atrocities the Japanese Empire committed. Japan even has statues to generals in the Japanese army that committed horrible atrocities. So Japan, I would say, in recent years, Japan is becoming more open to admitting to their war crimes, but there's still a problem in Japan with that. North Korea is, well, North Korea is a whole different story. North Korea is the, you know, yeah, North Korea, I would say, is a whole different story on that. It's, oh yeah, Iran's education is terrible. There's also in Ukraine, in their education system, Ukraine does not teach about the Volyn genocide. And for people that don't know what the Volyn genocide was, the Volyn genocide was in 1943 and 1944. That was where a bunch of Ukrainian nationalists, they went into Polish villages and they just slaughtered everyone. Women, kids, just mass murdered people. It's estimated that at least 100,000 Polish people were murdered. And as far as I know, the Ukrainian education system does not teach that. And the leader of that group, Stefan Bandera, he's the guy who's responsible for a lot of those atrocities. So I don't have anything against the country of Ukraine, but I don't think that Stefan Bandera was a good person. So a lot of countries, like, you know, you have a lot of countries around the world that they don't admit to the bad things that they have done. See here. What kind of cards we got? 9 and 2. I think that every country should admit to the horrible things that they did. And this Volyn genocide, this happened in 1943. This was during World War II, but this was, stop asking personal information. It's called, who's asking personal information? Wait, what? Even the Japanese company Mitsubishi doesn't apologize to the family of a POW that went to hard labor during World War II. Well, yeah, I would say that they're ultra-nationalists. I would say that they are, yeah, I would say they were ultra-nationalists. But yeah, the Stefan Bandera was a really bad guy. Like he was an evil man. He was not a good person at all. But you know, and most Polish people, I would say, would they support Ukraine in the current modern conflict that's going on with Russia attacking them. But I will tell you from a Polish perspective, a lot of Polish people, they get really angry when they see statues of Stefan Bandera in Ukraine, because that his organization was responsible for, over 100,000 Polish people that were murdered. My family has been on the wrong side of history. My ancestors killed a lot of people. I don't think like they do, and I broke the cycle of violence. Well, thank you, Suspect 13. Thank you for the super chat. The thing about this is, here's the thing is, if you didn't commit any crimes yourself, you're not responsible for that. You admit that your ancestors did horrible things. I don't know who your ancestors were, but you admit that your ancestors did horrible things, and that's what everybody should do. If your ancestors did horrible things, you admit to it, and you say, "I'm sorry for what my ancestors did." You're not personally responsible for it, but you at least admit that it was your ancestors or your people that had done something horrible. My ancestors, from I would say my ancestors from 900 years ago. Do you know who my ancestors were 900 years ago? My ancestors 900 years ago were not peasants. They weren't aristocrats either, but do you know who they were? They were bandits. My ancestors were 900 years ago. They were invaders also, a lot of times. How do I know that? My ancestors that were from hundreds of years ago, they actually came from the Mongolian army. So I'm Polish, but I have a lot of Asian ancestry, going back, and so a huge chunk of my family is Tatar, and I'm proud to be Polish Tatar also. But when my ancestors originally came to Poland, they were invading Poland with the Mongolian Empire, and they committed horrible things. And what happened was when the Mongolian Empire collapsed, the Mongolian soldiers, the Tatar soldiers that were actually in Poland, a lot of them stayed in Poland, and what they did was they formed, a lot of them formed bandit gangs, or they became mercenaries, and they went around attacking Polish villages and robbing people. They were like the Vikings, basically, where they wouldn't have a specific country, but what they would do is they would ride into a village, they would kill people, or rob them, or both, and then they would just fall back, which is what the Vikings did. They would go into an area by ship, they would rob the area, and then they'd leave. They weren't really conquerors. That's what my ancestors did. They would rob people, and they would fall back. But the difference is the Vikings rode ships. My ancestors, they rode horses. They were cavalry people. The Tatars were really good riders. They really knew how to ride horses. They were really good at that. That's it. My ancestors, probably did some messed up things 900 years ago. But I'm still proud to be Polish, and I'm proud to be a Tatar. But I also, admit that when my ancestor, I don't know what my ancestor did specifically 900 years ago, but judging by the fact that my ancestor was in the Mongolian Empire, centuries ago, and they invaded, Poland, where my parents are from, I'm judging that my ancestor probably did horrible things. Let me see here. Thank you, Shark, for the super chat. About the Greek gods you were talking about last week, I think Hera made Hercules murder Megara in mythology. Well, I know who Hercules is, but I don't know who the other people are. Silver Fox. I missed a super chat from Tricky Mario. I'm sorry, Mario. Let me look. How much do I spend on clothes for my videos? That is a great question, and thank you, Blinded Eagle, for the super chat. Some of my outfits, are really expensive. Like this shirt, for example, this right here, this is like a, you see this, this is basically like a Midwestern shirt right here that I'm wearing. This shirt I got from, I didn't buy it from Amazon. I bought this from a local store in my town that sells like this kind of clothing. You know, this shirt cost me $90. So this is not necessarily like a shirt that I I bought for like cosplay. This is just a shirt. I walked into like a store, like a clothing store. I wanted to buy myself some new clothes, and I looked at this. I don't really buy clothes that often, but I wanted to buy myself like a new shirt or a jacket. And I saw this shirt. I'm like, wow, this shirt's really cool and nice. And so I bought it. It's like one of the most expensive shirts that I got. But I figured, I play a lot of Red Dead Redemption, and I like this shirt a lot. And I was thinking, this would be kind of cool to wear during like Red Dead Redemption like videos. So that's what the hat I have here. This hat isn't that expensive. This hat was like what, $20. It's a pretty cheap hat. The other hat that I have a second hat. That hat is more expensive. That's like a $70 hat. But some of the outfits that I wear are not that expensive. But the Max Payne outfit that I wear, like the Max Payne, the trench coat that I'm wearing for Max Payne, like the Max Payne 2 playthrough, is like a $80 coat. The most expensive cosplay that I've ever worn, the most expensive piece of clothing that I've worn ever on a playthrough, is the Watch Dogs one. Like Watch Dogs, the Aiden Pierce jacket. I wore it also for the video where I was pissing off the scammers. That one. That's like the Aiden Pierce jacket. The Aiden Pierce bandana, and the Aiden Pierce hat. That together, I think, was like $130, all of that together. The more other expensive outfits that I wear are usually the military ones. Like when you guys see me playing the military games, like when I dress up like soldier stuff, and like when I play like SOCOM or something like that, or Call of Duty, the military outfits that I wear, a lot of times those will be pretty pricey. The vests that I wear, those are real vests. They're not like armored vests, but those are like real tactical vests. Those vests, like, I have one that was only like $20, but some of the other vests are like $60-$70. The helmets, those were a bit more pricey, $40-$50. But usually I get my money back from these, for these outfits. So like when I wear these outfits, usually when I put out a playthrough part, usually I'll get my money back, probably within like a few weeks. Usually on each video, like, separately, I will get my money back on that. So it is a good investment, I'm wearing something for the video, and it's, people are finding it entertaining. So that's, before all of that, Akiton T4 was, wait, what is that, Max? It was horrifying, kind of, what was that? Thank you for the super chat, Max. Thank you, Blind Eagle, and thank you, Mario. Let me look. I find fascism and communism to be blood brothers. They're authoritarians, saw some of the worst people come to power, killed millions of people, and severely impacted their countries for years. I agree, Mario. Thank you for the super chat. And what I will say though, if you combine both communism and fascism, if you combine both of those extremist ideologies, if you put both of those ideologies together, fascism and communism have killed more people than any other ideology in history. Those two ideologies put together. Fascism and communism are responsible for over 100 million deaths, if you put both of them together. So that's, so both of those ideologies are just pure evil.
I'm sure all the girls love you.
I like the pretty way you talk.
No problem, Mario. What are your thoughts on the NCR from Fallout New Vegas? The NCR isn't as bad as Caesar's Legion, but what's annoying about the NCR is very imperialist. They claim to be a democracy, but they don't let people decide whether they want to be part of the NCR or not. They conquer you. So there's never a vote on whether you want to join the NCR. They just annex everything. And the NCR, they'll take over an area, they'll charge people with really high taxes. It's basically like a scam. They take over areas, they put really high taxes, and they don't protect it. And they let people be to the mercy of, marauders and bandits and super mutants and whatever else attacks them. So that's it. So the Legion is messed up. I will admit that. They're brutal. They're not, the Legion is more evil than the NCR. But one thing the Legion does better than the NCR is the Legion at least protects their towns. They at least protect their people. Where the NCR does not protect their people, and they basically let their people get killed constantly by bandits and, fiends and raiders. What if the reason the Angels didn't like the Speed Demons at first was because the later took over Vegas before the former did? Are you talking about in your fanfiction, DL Gaming? Bro, can a dictator ever work? Oh, let me put a bet here. I'm gonna win this hand. Thank you, DL Gaming. I'm a bit confused. Wait, who are you talking about? The Legion is more evil than the actual real-life Roman Empire is now extinct. It depends on the specific time. Certain time periods in the Roman Empire, was definitely not as evil as the Legion, but other times was. The thing about that is that some of the most women aristocrats had a lot of power in the Roman Empire. The thing is, the Roman Empire was sexist. It was. Women were not equal to men in the Roman Empire, but women actually had more equality. Oh, I just won $14 in the Roman Empire than they did in the Legion. So they had more rights in the original Roman Empire than they did in Caesar's Legion. Yeah. So about that, the person asking me, can a dictatorship work? I'm gonna say for the most part, no. And the thing about that is, when here's the thing, when people look at dictators, right? People always, the question that people ask themselves about it is they ask, why are dictators so brutal? Why do dictators kill so many people? Why are they such heartless people? The thing about that, it makes sense why dictators kill so many people. The reason is it's because it's the person who became the dictator. Because think about this. For somebody to become a dictator, they have to be extremely manipulative. Usually dictators that come to power have some form of intelligence. Now, it doesn't mean that they're good people, just means that they have some form of intelligence. But they're very manipulative, they have some form of intelligence, and they have to be very ruthless. For somebody to become a dictator, for somebody to take power as a dictator, they're, by default, always going to be ruthless. And so when they come to power, they're going to, do horrible things. Now, certain dictators are obviously worse than other dictators. Not every dictator is the same. But by default, almost every single dictator in history is ruthless, because they come to power and they come to power doing ruthless things, and so they're gonna kill people. They're not gonna really care that much. You have to have no conscience to become a dictator. I wouldn't say that completely. I would say it depends on the dictator, but I would say that a dictator is going to be more ruthless than the average person. Like, if you look at a person like Lee Kuan Yew, for example, Lee Kuan Yew is arguably the most successful dictator in history. He is. I'm not saying dictatorships are a good thing, but Lee Kuan Yew, for people that don't know, he was the dictator of Singapore. And he is pointed to as like the only dictator in history that didn't do horrible things against his people, didn't rob from his people, and he got rid of corruption a lot in Singapore. He went after corruption. If you were corrupt in Singapore, he'd kill you. So he was a brutal guy, but he also, built up Singapore. He wasn't stealing from his country like a lot of other dictators do, where they just pocket hundreds of millions of dollars. He did actually try to improve the lives of his people, and Singapore to this day is an economic powerhouse because of him. Like, the average Singaporean makes $70,000 a year. That's how much the average Singaporean makes. The average American makes $40,000 a year. So Singaporeans are more richer than the average Americans. So average Singaporean is more richer than the average American. They have more money. They're more wealthier. So he did turn his country into an economic powerhouse. However, though, here's the thing. Just because Lee Kuan Yew was a good dictator doesn't mean that dictatorships work. It doesn't mean that it does. Because Lee Kuan Yew is basically like a needle in a haystack. That's pretty much what he is. 99% of dictators are going to be scumbags. Like, I cannot think of any other dictator that was a good person. I can't think of one dictator that was a good person besides Lee Kuan Yew. He was, like, the only dictator that actually, did good for his country. But, by default, almost every single other dictator is going to be, some terrible, evil scumbag. It's almost always going to happen. Napoleon, I would count him as a successful dictator. The thing about that is, Napoleon Napoleon wasn't evil, but he was bad. You know, Napoleon did care about his people. Like, Napoleon believed that the poor were equal to the rich. Like, he believed that the poor had just as much of a say in government as the rich. He hated the elitism of aristocrats, and Napoleon did not believe that religion should be in government. However, though, even though Napoleon, expanded more rights for poor people, he did. Napoleon, on the other hand, the worst thing that Napoleon did was he brought back slavery in Haiti. So Haiti had abolished slavery with the French Revolution. The French Revolution happened, and the revolution in France, the Republican government abolished slavery. And what happened is, when Napoleon came to power, he brought back slavery. He should not have done that. That was, one of the worst things that he did. So, like, Napoleon is not as evil as, like, he's not as bad as Hitler. Like, Hitler is, like, 10 times worse than Napoleon. But Napoleon did do some bad things also. But Lee Kuan Yew, he wasn't involved in any wars. He didn't, he didn't mass murder his people. I'm sure he probably killed some people. But, he didn't commit genocide. And he brought up the living standards of his people. If you ask most Singaporeans, do they think he was a good leader? They'll tell you he was. So to answer the question, could a good dictator work? Technically, but it would be very hard. Because you would have to have a dictator that absolutely cares about his people. And most dictators do not care about their people. And so Lee Kuan Yew is that rare exception of a dictator that actually cared about his people. Most other dictators are scumbags. Let me see here. Hey, Professional, to Saint Red Dead 2 got abandoned. Do you think they should have made an Undead Nightmare 2? I do. And I think it would have sold them a lot, Aiden. But the thing about that is Rockstar is, look at how much money I made. I'm doing really good. I'm multitasking right now. Rockstar is just so lazy. That's why. So if you're asking me, do I think that a good dictator could work? No. Because the chances of having a good dictator, like a dictator that actually cares about his people, is like the same chances of winning the lottery. It's not gonna happen. Most dictators are gonna be scumbags.
What the? Oh, hell no. Not like this. Holy Christ.
Who was the worst teacher that I ever had? I had some really bad teachers. I would say the worst teacher that I ever had was probably in college. In college, I had this one professor. It was for a lab class. I forget the name of the lab class, but it was a lab class. It was like 10 years ago. And what happened was we had to work in groups. So we would work in groups of 2, and what we would do is both of us would complete 50% of the assignment. So he would give us an assignment, and how the assignment worked is that one person would do 50% of it, the other person would put 50% of it, and they would each do a separate part of the assignment, and then they would compare their notes and put it together and share their findings with each other. That's how the group worked. And what happened was my partner, he wasn't in class all week. And what ends up happening is I did like a little bit more than half the assignment. He comes in and he says, he's like, sorry, I've been sick, I've been out, can you give me your part of the assignment? Because we had to hand in separate copies, but we had to send in even though we were both responsible for 50% of it, we had to hand in each our own copy. And so he told me, give me your copy, I'll make a copy of your notes, and I'll add on my section to it, and I'll make an extra copy for you, to hand in. And I said, okay, no problem. Now, here's the thing about this. My teacher, my professor, he saw the work I did. He saw the work I did on paper, and he saw that I gave it to my partner. He was okay with that. And what ends up happening is my partner never came back to class. He never did. He dropped the class after that. And he took my assignment home, and he didn't give it back to me. So the part of the assignment that I did, he didn't give that back to me. And what ends up happening is I come back to class, the guy doesn't show up, the assignment is due. He tells me that I got a 0 on the assignment. And I tell him, you saw me give the assignment to him. You saw me do the work. I gave it to him. He was supposed to do his part of it and add it in. We're supposed to hand it in together. And he told me that that was no excuse, and he told me, you know what, he embarrassed me in front of the class, and he said to me, you know what your problem is, Patrick? You trust people too much. That's what he said to me. And he gave me a 0 on the assignment. And he embarrassed me in front of the class. That, I would say, is probably the worst teacher I've ever had. Because, if anything, you know, he was just a complete scumbag about it. If anything, he could have just let me redo the assignment. I would have just redone the assignment. But the fact he gave me a 0, did not even give me a chance to do the assignment, and blamed the whole thing on me, when it was my partner that had literally taken my lab home. And there is very few times. I have only gotten a 0 twice in school. I only got a 0 once on an assignment in 8th grade, and only once on an assignment in college. There's only 2 times in my life I've ever gotten a 0 on anything. And so that has stuck with me. I remembered that for the rest of my life, and it's just like, I wish I could get it out of my head, but it just bothered me so much, and it annoyed the hell out of me. And the fact he just embarrassed me in front of the class like that, and the thing about this is, the majority of the classmates after that, they talked to me. And they said to me, like, I'm sorry he did that to you, I feel bad for you. Like, the majority of the class agreed with me. That's what they, you know, that's what they said to me, but that was just such a scummy thing to do. So he was the worst teacher that I think I've ever had. I don't think communism inherently equals mass killing. It's not great, but in the 1910s, there were Republican syndicates. The problem was Marxist-Leninist ideology and collectivization. Here's the thing about this. Communism by itself, by default, is going to be an authoritarian ideology, because if you are going to create an economic system where you only have working class people, you have no other, you know, classes besides that, and everything is owned by the state, then by default that's going to be an authoritarian government. There's no such thing as a democratic government where there's only one class of people and the state owns everything. It's by default going to be an authoritarian government. That's why communism always ends in dictatorship. And so, by default, when you have an authoritarian government, when you have a dictatorship, it's a lot easier for, you know, murders like that to happen. That's why communist countries are always so oppressive. If I were the president, I bet I would be the worst, not because of incompetence, because I'd start wars for no reason and force everyone to look up to me like a god. Well, why would you do that?
You look like an idiot.
Do you think the Middle East would have been more stable if the Soviets never invaded Afghanistan? Yes, but at the same time what I will say this is, one of the U.S.'s biggest mistakes ever was that they armed the Mujahideen. When the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, the U.S. armed the Mujahideen, saying that they were freedom fighters. But the reason the Mujahideen were fighting against the Soviets is because they wanted to replace the Soviet communist dictatorship with their own dictatorship. And so I think one of the biggest mistakes was that the U.S. Had armed the Mujahideen. Syndicalists don't have state ownership. The workers own the Soviet. They, rather than some state funding, own an enterprise like Yugoslavia. Well, Yugoslavia was the most successful communist country. Not that communism works, but if you were to compare all the communist countries, Yugoslavia was definitely the most successful one. Because Yugoslavia traded with both the West and the East. And they didn't take sides. They didn't take the East or the West side. They were a communist country, sure, but they traded with both sides, and they took advantage of both sides. And Yugoslavian passport was a stronger passport than the American passport. And Yugoslavia exported their products to Western countries. The Soviet Union never exported any of their products to Western countries. They refused to do that. Where the Yugoslavians exported their communist products to Western products. So it's kind of weird. The Yugoslavian, a communist country, was exporting their products to Western countries and making money from that, but it worked for them. The biggest export Yugoslavia made was the Yugo car. The Yugo car alone made Yugoslavia rich, because the Yugo car, it wasn't a great car, but it was a car anybody could afford. Anybody could afford the Yugo car because it was such a cheap car, and that was Yugoslavia's greatest export to the West. Favorite president? I would say in the 1900s, Teddy Roosevelt. In the 1800s, Lincoln. Well, just stop making this weird comments, Couch. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, Zach. You know, but he lied when he was getting elected. Modern Warfare 3, I think I'll play the beta. Maybe we'll do a stream of the beta. Maybe we'll do a stream of it. But I guess we'll be wrapping up the stream here, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed the stream, you know, do drop a like if you guys enjoyed the stream. So we'll be wrapping it up here. Thank you guys for hanging out. It was a fun stream. We chatted a lot. And I'll see you guys on the next one. And this weekend, I'm probably going to have that video coming up of just me pissing off that scammer. So there's going to be another video of you guys are going to see me of me interacting with a scammer. And I annoyed a scammer. I annoyed a scammer for 5 hours. I annoyed a scammer. And I'm going to have a video on that. I think a lot of people are going to find it funny, probably. But thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.